The slasher genre is all about gruesome deaths, all played out for the sick and twisted pleasure of the viewer. In a world of carnage and mayhem, it seems only fitting that survival isn't always the best outcome for our characters. I'm Jess from What Culture, and here are 10 slasher movie fates worse than death. Number 10. Resurrected as a skinless corpse after being torn to pieces. Hellraiser. Hellraiser begins with Frank Cotton traveling to Morocco. He's come to a market there in search of hedonistic pleasure. It's at this market that he finds the Lament configuration, a seemingly harmless puzzle that when solved will apparently give Frank the pleasures he desires. To Frank's surprise, upon completion of the puzzle, hooks and chains tear through the walls and sink themselves into his skin. It's a horrifically gory way to die. Frank is brought back to life when his brother moves into his old house, apparently unconcerned with Frank's disappearance. His brother Larry accidentally cuts himself in the attic, and the blood opens up the portal again, helping Frank to break through, this time as a disgusting skinless corpse. At this point, Frank will do absolutely anything to get a real body, including murdering and draining people of their own life to give it back to himself. No one's safe from Frank's desperate wrath. Number 9. Gaslit and framed for the murder of your family and friends. Happy birthday to me. Jenny's a young girl that recently became part of her school's most popular clique when her friends are gradually killed off as her birthday nears. Around halfway through the movie, Ginny recovers her lost memories and realizes that her friends were partially to blame for her mother's death. At the same point, we the audience are treated to our first sight of the killer, and it turns out to be none other than Ginny herself. Ginny thinks she's gone absolutely crazy, but everything is not as it seems. A deranged birthday party in the climax sees Ginny surrounding herself with the corpses of her friends. However, who we believe to be Ginny turns out to be another character, Anne, in a latex mask. Anne has plotted the whole thing to frame Ginny as revenge for her mother having an affair with Anne's father, making the girls half-sisters. Ginny manages to overpower and kill Anne, but as she stands over Anne's body, the police are left with only one conclusion: Ginny was the culprit all along, and we're left with the bleak realization that Ginny will spend the rest of her life in prison. Number 8. Trapped in a mineshaft and forced to eat your co-workers to survive. My Bloody Valentine. So the movie begins underground, telling the audience the story about the Valentine's Day miner tragedy that plagued the town 25 years before the film's events. On the night of the Valentine's dance, the foreman in charge of the town's mining shaft left their crew unsupervised so that they could attend the dance. The foreman forgot to check the methane gas levels, and consequently there was an explosion that trapped 5 miners in the shaft. By the time the town managed to recover the buried miners, only one of them had survived. The sole survivor, Harry Warden, managed to stay alive for the 6 weeks he was trapped by eating his fellow co-workers. The poor kid was driven completely insane from being trapped in such a tight space, having to watch as his friends and colleagues die painfully and subsequently feasting on their rotting flesh to stay alive. Harry is so damaged by the trauma, he has to spend the rest of his life in a mental institute, but not before going on a murder spree. Number 7. Soul gets trapped in a kid's toy. Child's Play. Before Annabelle was a thing, Chucky was the scariest children's doll of all time, and even now he could give the possessed Conjuring star a run for her money. He may look cute, but Chucky sadistically kills anyone who gets in his way. He's vicious and callous, not the usual temperament of a kid's toy really. That's because he isn't a kid's toy really. Chucky is actually Charles Lee Ray, a fictional serial killer that transferred his body into a good guy doll. Chucky endures 7 movies worth of insanity inside the body of a toy. He's killed and resurrected countless times throughout the franchise, while he desperately tries time and time again to transfer his soul back into a human body. He hates his life as a doll so much, he doesn't even care if that body belongs to a child. Anything is better than the life he has. He feels every gunshot, knife wound, and fireplace burn forced upon him as if he was still human. His suffering is endless, though nothing less than deserved. Number 6. Kidnapped and forcefully impregnated with a turkey baster. Don't Breathe. When Rocky, Alex, and Money lay out their plan to break into a blind veteran's house in Don't Breathe, we learned that the man had recently come into quite a bit of settlement money. Apparently, his daughter had been killed in a car accident by a wealthy woman named Cindy, and that the crime was settled outside of court. Not only is this the catalyst that sets off the movie's plot, but we find out about halfway through that this throwaway mention to the car crash is actually more important than you would have ever thought. When things start to go awry, Rocky and Alex attempt to escape the house through the basement, and what they find find tied up and gagged is a pregnant Cindy. The blind veteran had kidnapped her, tied her up, and artificially inseminated her with his child as a replacement for his dead daughter. It's a controversial twist that definitely affected its audience, and for good reason. It is brutal, sick, and disgusting, and the woman looks absolutely terrified when we meet her. Cindy is eventually accidentally killed, but she probably wished it had come sooner. Number 5. Trapped in an unending horror movie. The Final Girls. Everyone has that nightmare where they're trapped inside a terrifying horror movie. Now imagine being unable to wake up from that nightmare. That was the situation that Max and her group of horror movie obsessed friends found themselves in. At a screening of a famous slasher movie, the group have to hack their way through the screen to escape a fire in the theater. It doesn't take long for the dysfunctional Scooby Gang to realize they've torn into the world of the movie. This may sound cool, and the characters themselves are pretty psyched too, until they realize they'll have to come face to face with the movie's killer. One by one, Max's friends are brutally killed along with the movie's cast of characters until she's the only one left. At the end of the film, when Max has faced off with the killer and survived, she wakes up relieved to find all of her dead friends are with her in hospital, recovering from the injuries given to them in the movie. We all collectively sigh with relief until we hear the signature horror movie music start once again, and we realize the group are all still trapped, this time in the sequel. Number 4. No choice but to hide in a padded cell. Final Destination. These movies show us that we cannot run away from our death, and that if we do, we may end up in a worse position than before, as death will follow you until he finds you. Claire Rivers found this out the hard way. After watching all of her friends die in gruesome and merciless ways, Claire realized after her own almost run-ins with death that she was gonna have to go to extreme lengths to keep him at bay. When we last see Claire at the ending of Final Destination, she and the only other 2 survivors of the movie believe that they're finally safe, only for one of the 2 boys with Claire to be killed in the final seconds before the credits roll. We meet Claire again in Final Destination 2 and find out that she's truly lost everything. She's now the only survivor left from the first movie, and to escape death indefinitely, she's locked herself away in a padded cell. Her new life is bleak and miserable, and Claire is on the verge of insanity because of the paranoia her life has led her to. She's constantly on the lookout for dangers that could kill her, and she's completely isolated herself from the world. Number 3. Chased by a killer demon for the rest of your life. It Follows. At the beginning of the movie, we see average American teenager Jay going about her suburban life as usual, from watching movies with friends to dating a cute out-of-town boy named Hugh. But her usual life is stopped short the night she decides to finally sleep with Hugh. Turns out Hugh has contracted a sexual disease demon and has been on the run trying to find some innocent girl to transfer it to. Poor Jay becomes that victim, and Hugh explains to her, as she's tied to a wheelchair, that for the rest of her life, this mysterious demon will follow her wherever she goes, and when it catches up to her, it will gruesomely kill Jay by sexually assaulting her. For the rest of the movie, Jay has to run, drive, swim, and crawl away as this horrifying demon gets closer and closer to her. Just when you think that her and her friends have trapped and killed the demon, and that Jay is finally free, we're faced with the bleak truth. As the credits roll, we see a figure looming in the background of the shot, slowly trailing after our protagonist once again. Number 2. Kidnapped by a cult and impregnated with your uncle's baby. Halloween 6. When Jamie Lee Curtis refused to appear in the franchise as Laurie anymore, her character is unceremoniously killed off screen in a car crash, and we're thusly introduced to her daughter. She's placed into foster care, bullied in school for being related to the town's infamous killer, and suffers horrific nightmares about her uncle, Michael Myers. The 4th movie follows Jamie as she's hunted down by Michael Myers and eventually possessed by him to try and murder her foster parents. In the 5th movie, Jamie's imprisoned in a children's mental institute and framed for the attempted murder of her foster mum, as no one believes that she was possessed for it. When Michael is caught and imprisoned, a man in black helps him escape, and the man kidnaps Jamie. From there, we find out what happens to Jamie in a deleted scene from Halloween 6. After being kidnapped by the man in black, Jamie's forced to live with the Thorn cult for 6 years, and it's within that time that teenage Jamie is artificially inseminated with her uncle's child. Number 1. Blinded and forced to live in a pit. Wrong Turn. The Wrong Turn franchise is mostly known nowadays for its gross-out gore and direct-to-DVD sequels that are just there to try and outdo the disgusting visuals of the film before. The 2021 reboot decided to actually try hard and give us a well-made new-age look at the infamous franchise. Instead of the cannibalistic inbred villains from before, the reboot introduces a cult founded prior to the Civil War that boasts a primitive life in the Appalachians. When our group of ragtag college graduates unwittingly cross paths with the barbaric cult, on a hiking trip, casualties and misunderstandings on both sides lead to the Foundation kidnapping and putting the kids on trial. When they're found guilty of lying, the 3 kids that are left are sentenced to darkness. We watch as one of the characters gets his eyes burnt closed. He's then subsequently thrown into a dark pit, where every other victim of this fate is sent to wander around in the dark for the rest of their days. It's absolutely barbaric, and the extensive torment these people have to go through is quite literally dark as all hell. Let me know down in that comment box if you can think of any other excellent slasher movie fates worse than death. As always, I've been Jess from What Culture. Thank you so much for hanging out with me. You can come say hi to me on my Twitter if you like, where I'm at Jess McDonald, but make sure you stay tuned to us here for plenty more content.